Man, last night had to be up there. You've gotten to call some epic moments, some fantastic games, but how was it getting a front row seat to watch Luka and that historic comeback victory?
Well, look, I mean, it had everything. What was bigger? I mean, the comeback or 60, 21, and 10? I mean,
Right.
Seriously. And then you throw it all into one, and they don't get much bigger in the regular season than that. I mean, the only thing really, to me, comparable in the regular season was Dirk's 29 in the fourth quarter against Utah. I think that was in the fall of 2008. He had 11 going into the fourth quarter, 29 in the fourth. This was something that was building and building and building through the game, but, obviously took off very, very late. But I mean, to put it into context, is it the greatest game I've ever seen? I mean, look, I was also there when Kobe outscored the Mavericks in three quarters, 62-61, which I don't think you'll ever see again. That was incredible. It's just remarkable. And he had 30 in the third quarter of that game. But let's put it this way. It's like when Bum Phillips was asked about Earl Campbell's ranking among NFL running backs. And he would say, I don't know if he's the best, but it doesn't take long to call roll before you get to him.
Amen to that. Chuck, have you seen some of the renderings for the inevitable Luka statue yet?
No. I mean, he shoots from so many different angles and whatnot. He does not have one signature move yet that we can put into bronze. But somehow I think we got about 10 to 15 years to figure out just what that move is going to be.
Chuck, for somebody that grew up a Knicks fan, was that special call in that game that night? I mean, I know your love for New York sports and stuff, and I mean that in a positive way. I'm not saying you're one of these jerks about it or anything like that. But
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, but for somebody that like loves New York sports and to see it against a team that you kind of pulled against, was it even kind of like one of those surreal moments for you?
You know what? Not really. I mean, look, I've been out of New York long enough. I mean, I left New York in 1984, and I spent 16 months in Philadelphia in the early 90s, and that was as close as to living in the East as I got again. Dallas is home to me,
Sure.
and will always be home. And when you think about it, I've actually watched the Mavericks and probably know more about Mavericks history than I know about Knicks history. So it's, I don't want to say it's just another game and another team, but at the same time, what's interesting is, when you post something on social media about it, and then all your New York friends, people you went to when you went to high school with, and that you've known since you were growing up, they're all coming out of the woodwork and wanting to talk to you. When basically, when Luka plays and does whatever he does, they pretty much ignore you. But the fact that it happened against the Knicks, you heard from a lot more people.
Chuck, you mentioned what was more fascinating in that game. Was it the comeback? Was it Luka? And Luka was certainly sensational, but you add in the comeback, and no team had ever won a game in the last 20 years when trailing by 9 with fewer than 35 seconds remaining. What stood out to you about that comeback? Was there maybe some point that people haven't highlighted to you, that some intricacies in that, maybe a play that really you thought adjusted the momentum in that game? But what an amazing job. Everything had to go right for the Mavericks, and everything
Absolutely
did.
Well, I think the one play that obviously no one's talking about was when the Mavericks pressed, and they forced a jump ball, and then Luka won the tip, and Dinwiddie got himself a three, and made it a 1 point game. It was a 4 point game at that time, and Dinwiddie makes that three to make it a 1 point game, and that totally changes the calculus on how the game is played. And as long as you're keeping it within one possession, you give yourself a chance. And the other thing I found interesting is that, how Tom Thibodeau ultimately played the game itself. There's been so much double teaming of Luka of late, basically saying we're not going to let him score and we're going to dare the other guys to go beat him. And that hasn't always worked very well when the Mavericks are knocking down 18 threes in a game. But the thinking basically was that, okay, let Luka score his 50, and the other guys aren't good enough to win. And for 47 minutes and 27 seconds, that strategy worked until it didn't work, right? And that's the thing that I take from the game. But ultimately, guys, what it shows is that it really doesn't matter what defense that a team plays against Luka. Luka pretty much has the cheat code against any of it. And, any way you want to play him, he's more than happy to have you play that way against him. And ultimately, he will find a way to get his. Not that it's going to be 60 every night or 50 every night or anything like that, but he's going to get plenty of opportunities. He's going to do it at an incredibly efficient rate, and he's going to be able to get others involved enough that the Mavericks have a really good chance to win. And the bottom line is when this guy is on the floor, this team always has a chance to win.
Chuck, and you'll know this reference, the Miami-Oakland game was known as the Sea of Hands, that playoff game where Stabler just flings the ball up. What is the nickname going to be for this game? What are we going to call this game? When that ball is bouncing around through all those Knicks' hands, all I could think of was the Sea of Hands playoff game, and it ends up in the right spot.
Yeah, who's Clarence Davis here? There is no Clarence Davis except the basket, right?
Exactly.
I don't know what they're going to call it, but maybe we should all get working on that because I think it's something that all of us, who obviously watch the Mavericks every night, or in your guys' case as talk show hosts, who talk about this team and have been here for a long time, have an understanding of the team. Somebody's got to come up with something. I'm not nearly creative enough to come up with something like that, but somebody really has to.
It's amazing, though, but you do such a great job. And I listen to you because I'm watching tape, and I'm listening to you in the broadcast, you and Brad, but you're always trying to educate us like, okay, this needs to happen. And how often do you, they've got to find a way to knock it off the rim, and they've got to get the ball, and then they got to get a shot up. Like Zach says, that just doesn't happen, right? But it happened last night. Rarely.
Somebody asked me earlier today, had you ever seen it? And, I can't point to an example, but goodness, I've watched enough basketball in my life over 50 years worth to believe that at some point I have to have seen it work. In fact, I know I've seen it work. I'm not necessarily sure I can remember the ball going in the basket like that. And I think that's what makes it just stomach churning for Tom Thibodeau, because he played the situation correctly. All of us scream, right? We scream to the high heavens when a team is down, is up by 3 and can foul to force free throws, as opposed to letting some team take a 3-point shot to tie the game, right? And Thibodeau did not allow that to happen. Quentin Grimes committed the foul. And because again, what are the odds of you grabbing the offensive rebound with that many people into the mix, and then being able to put it back in? And yet they beat the odds. It's the ultimate inside royal flush, right? Goodness, what would be the payoff?
Chuck, this team, is really, really banged up right now. But they're star players. They're having guys stepping up in these games. Looking forward, is this? I know you don't want to play without your players, but is this one of those moments we're going to look back on these games that they're getting without their stars and their players and say that kind of was the turning point of the season for the Mavs?
Well, there's always that moment, Ryan. We all know every year, good or bad, there is some defining moment. I don't know if this night last night against New York was the defining moment. And again, because Luka is playing.
Right.
The Mavericks actually have to prove at some point that they can win a game without Luka, because so far this year they're 0-3. And Luka is going to sit out some games here at some point. And Lord knows he could sit out one of the next 2 after playing 48 minutes last night. It wouldn't surprise me in the least, given the competition. Although the Rockets have been kind of feisty here, even though they haven't won many games here lately. But they're feisty, and we saw what happened on Friday night. It took 50 from Luka for the Mavericks to win. And San Antonio's not very good, but at some point, they're clearly worried about how much he's playing as far as minutes goes, but even more importantly, just the punishment that he's taking in trying to lead this team right now. And you've got to take care of that to make sure that you're good to go in April. And so we'll see what happens here. But, listen, Devin Booker is now out for a month. The Mavericks are a game behind Phoenix right now. They're 4 games out of the lead in the Western Conference. They've already beaten the division leader, the conference leader, Denver, twice this year. They know how to play against Memphis. They'll have a big week next week, after this run through with the Rockets and San Antonio, when Boston and New Orleans come in here next Thursday and Saturday. Yeah. And I think maybe then we'll know a lot more about, where they are, who they are, what ultimately they're capable of. And obviously, even from that point, there's, 5 weeks to go before the trade deadline and whatever moves the Mavericks decide that they want to make or not make. But the bottom line, again, is when 77 is in the lineup, they've got a chance to win every time they play.
Amen to that. Chuck Cooperstein, Dallas Mavericks radio play-by-play voice. Chuck, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for giving us some time, and enjoy the remainder of your holiday. Happy New Year's, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Appreciate you having me. Happy New Year, guys. Take care.